Okay, so today I'm really excited. I've been looking forward to this day for a while. We have Dr. Russell Jaffe, and I can't even begin to tell you his credentials. He's an MD, PhD, and we'll go through all of his background before we start talking about the LRA test by Elisa Act, which is something I did prior to my breast implant explantation surgery because I wanted to know the status of my body at the time. But as you know, I have lots of questions for Dr. Jaffe, not about this, but I've never met anyone that we can talk about. We talked for maybe 2-3 hours. I'm almost certain the first time he and I spoke, and I thought this is just one piece of the pie with Dr. Jaffe. We've got lots more to talk about in the future. So fasten your seatbelt because we're going to learn and grow together. And by the way, Dr. Jaffe, it's time to dance. I don't know if you like to dance, but once you hear the music, it's time to dance. Here we go.
The Lillian McDermott Show.
We love, we fear, bridges we burn, we make mistakes, then we live and learn. When life gets tough, and it seems like your best ain't good enough. If you're in need of hope, you know where I'll be right here. Right here, and when you need a friend, you can count on me. I'll be right here, waiting for you.
This is the place you can always turn to when you need a friend. The Lillian McDermott Show. To reach out to Lillian, visit her on the web at whenyouneedafriend.com. Now let's all learn together. Here's Lillian McDermott.
Hello, my listening friend. It's so nice we can meet each other on the air on this beautiful, best day ever. And for those of you who are tuning in since 2011 to the classroom, the Lillian McDermott radio show /classroom since 2011, or maybe you tuned in yesterday for the first time, welcome back. I am so grateful for you. But if this is the first time that someone said, hey, tune in today, or come join us, or maybe you just stumbled upon the class, welcome. Please know I've been waiting for you. This is a safe place where you can go to when you need a friend. It is my commitment to provide alternative ways to heal, and it is my mission to make awareness, responsibility, and truth a part of our everyday life. And I hope you, my listening, as well as my viewing friends, if you want to interact at Lillian's radio show on Facebook Live, you're there. So I'm welcoming all of you to embrace a new truth and live the life of your dreams. That is what we focus on in the classroom, what we want, not what we don't want, what we think of. And during my journey with breast implant illness, which I thought was breast implant illness, and I'm not even sure if I just knew that the implants were causing pain and they needed to come out. But in my pursuit of trying to figure out my health, I found a test called LRA by Elisa Act. And here are my test results. So this is a way that we can take our health back. And so the company is called Elisa Act Biotechnologies. And you know what? When the student is ready, the teacher appears. And Dr. Russell Jaffe, MD, PhD, was the person that I kept being led to. And I asked my friend Lisa Geyer, she goes, oh, I love Russell. I know him. And I spoke to somebody else, oh, Dr. Jaffe, he's amazing. And so I thought, man, I need to look into this a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. And right before my explantation surgery, I ran to the lab, had my blood work done, sent it to him. And during my recuperation, I had a conversation with Jayashri, and she was fabulous. And I learned so much about who I am, but I still have so many questions. So I said, Dr. Jaffe, would you come out and share a little bit more about this information that may be helpful to you or maybe in the future it might, or maybe someone you know. And so Dr. Jaffe started off his journey to disprove this integrative stuff. And when I say integrative, I'm talking about Chinese medicine, acupuncture, meditation, homeopathy, and manipulative arts. But Dr. Jaffe decided and figured out a way that he could embrace all of that and give us a roadmap to health. And since it is our sole purpose in life to give and receive love and knowledge, I am grateful that Dr. Russell Jaffe, MD, PhD, is here to do just that. Welcome, Dr. Jaffe, to the classroom.
Thanks for having me.
Well, I'm grateful that you're here. Like I said, your background is interesting because your journey was to, what's about this stuff? Let's look into this. Maybe it's not good. Maybe I hear so many MDs go, oh, that stuff is woo-woo. Is that what motivated you, or did something dramatically change in you to make you look beyond your training?
No, I was trained in academic conventional internal medicine and laboratory medicine. I was on the staff of the National Institutes of Health in Bethesda, Maryland, officer in the United States Public Health Service. And I heard initially that there was an acupuncturist on MacArthur Boulevard in Washington, D.C. who could get results that we at NIH could not get. Now, I was sure at that point, if there was anything worthwhile, that we would have it at NIH and we'd be studying it. So I went to debunk Wing Wu, and I did a 7-year apprenticeship with him. And then I taught the nation's first certification program that became the basis for medical licensure in New York and California, called Oriental Medical Strategies in Western Medical Practices. I then went on to help found an organization that certifies clinical nutritionists, CCNs, because we needed people who could be qualified health coaches. That's different than the American College of Nutrition, who has a more senior credential for PhDs and MDs and other advanced degree people. But the CCN is for baccalaureate people who want to know 21st century evidence-based health coaching with an emphasis on lifestyle and supplementation, but not to forget attitude and environment. So yes, I came as a skeptic. I am now an advocate. This goes back decades. In the late 1970s, along with C. Norman Shealy and a variety of other colleagues, we founded the American Holistic Medical Association. And I believe I'm the only faculty member who was on the invited main stage of the first and the last, the 37th meeting of the American Holistic Medical Association. It's now broadened into a bigger tent for all professionals who are interested in the integrative, in the holistic, in the personalized, in the evidence-based approaches that use best of both, de-risked, that is least risk, highest gain, with an emphasis on nature, nurture, and wholeness, and evoking human healing responses, not just treating symptoms and suppressing them.
Very good. Very good. What a journey. What a journey. And probably never thought that you would be such a wonderful advocate in this journey for what you thought, okay, well, if this is real, then we would know about it. And the reality is many of us don't know about it because we've been taught from birth, we've been programmed since birth. Let me just put it that way. And, and we think it's true.
If I can jump in on that,
yes.
It is a systemic issue. It's an existential issue. It's an issue that goes to the fundamental nature of the training programs of medical professionals. Whether you're talking about MDs and DOs, or you're talking about DCs and NPs and PAs, there's a whole bunch of professions.
Yes.
But in common is an outmoded notion that if I know your symptoms and treat them to make them go away, then I've actually helped you. The other alternative is to look way ahead, before catastrophe, before chronic illness, before inflammatory conditions, before self-attacking autoimmune conditions, from diabetes to eczema, from multiple sclerosis to asthma. There are hundreds, maybe thousands of self-attacking conditions that fundamentally mean we've lost tolerance. when we're really healthy, we're really tolerant to the world around us.
Mm-hmm.
When we break tolerance, when we lose tolerance, now we're at risk of inflammatory repair deficit conditions, of autoimmune self-attacking conditions, of just losing our vitality, our get up and go, got up and went, and we can't find it anymore. We all deserve better than that. And whatever phase of life you're in, if you're young and immortal, you're young and immortal. If you're at my age, you're a little more cautious. Different phases of life require different self-care, self-awareness, and practice. Because we can together provide lots of information and inspiration, but it's the perspiration, it's the effort that people put in.
Mm-hmm.
And often people say to me, well, gee, do you have anything else that you can do in your life other than take care of yourself? I say, well, I only invest 5% of my time in my rather efficient self-care. 5% turns out to be 72 minutes a day. If you do the math, it turns out to be correct. So if you'll give me 72 minutes a day of investing in yourself, if you'll invest in yourself for 72 minutes a day, you can do everything we're going to talk about in regard to eating a diet that you can digest, assimilate, and eliminate without immune burden, having neurohormonal balance, having an ability to detoxify and get the marinating chemicals of high-tech living out of your body, because we do get exposed to them. Now, in the 21st century, we have to deal with biological detoxification on a daily basis. And it all comes under a neat word called epigenetics.
Mm-hmm.
Now, epigenetics is everything that's not genomic or genetic. And it turns out that is 92% of the quality of your life, 92% of your health risk, 92% of what's going on with you is under a category called epigenetics.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just a fancy word for lifestyle. This has to do with your habits of daily living, because as you eat and drink, as you think and do, and I mean the composite of all of it, so your future will be determined. So the past is behind us. We have to learn from it and let it go. We are in this moment to enjoy this moment and to be together in this moment. And the future hasn't happened. Now, this is an old Buddhist metaphor, but if you live in the future, you're going to get anxious. And if you live in the past, you're going to get depressed. So don't do that. And I did hear that from my daughter's godfather, who happens to be the Dalai Lama, who is a human being.
That's a great honor to have the Dalai Lama as the godfather. So when we're looking at the epigenetics, we can rewrite the program. That's how Dr. Bruce Lipton has said, in the classroom. Oh my gosh, I'm just knocking over everything. That it is so important to rewrite the program, not just ignore it, but rewrite it. And so, and so as we are rewriting this belief that we are born with our DNA, and our DNA will determine our future and will determine how we will die and how we will live, we give away our power to our DNA, when in fact our DNA is just suggestive. It's the potential. But we can turn it on and turn it off by this thought process, by the way we live our life. And there's so many pollutants out there, so many things that are affecting our bodies, but we can get on top of that. Is what I'm hearing you say. And so because I know that, I thought, okay, I don't want to be labeled breast implant illness. I don't want to be labeled. I just want to know what's going on with my body, because each one of us is an individual. What works for me may not work for you, and so on and so on. So when it comes to doing this testing, I thought, oh, it's definitely in here. It's going to come on that I'm allergic to silicone, or reactive to this or reactive to that. But that's not what I discovered. I discovered something more. So let's talk about the LRA by Elisa Act. This is the test results that I received. And we're going to go a little bit over this. If you have a question, feel free to type in a Q and write the question down, because maybe this is something that you might be looking for. And there's an opportunity for you to also have this test done for yourself. So Anyway, with that in mind, what is LRA by Elisa Act, and how did you create that?
Right. So this goes back 3.5 decades. At that time, and to most colleagues even today, the human immune system is a black box. When it's operating correctly, we're tolerant, and we have no allergies, we have no hypersensitivities, and frankly, we don't have chronic illness because we're able to repair ourselves using restorative sleep and having foods that we can digest, assimilate, and eliminate without immune burden. It means having neurohormonal balance. It means having the ability to detoxify and remove from the body the stress molecules and the toxins of high-tech living. And yes, we can talk about the different categories and how they specifically use up essential nutrients, but the message is really very simple. You can choose a life that is high-tech, highly processed, and intoxicating, or you can choose a life that is harmonious, high-touch, low-tech, more whole, and frankly, you can reduce by 80% the anti-nutrients that use up the good stuff. And generally, people need more of the good stuff and less of the bad stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And the good news is you can do something about it.
Okay. So earlier you said that only 5% is what we need to kind of transform our life. That if we do the self-care, if we have 5%, which equals to 72 minutes.
Right.
Yeah. But most people say, I don't have the time. I don't have the time. I don't even have 5 minutes. But then we'll spend a half an hour or an hour surfing the web, watching a television program that has nothing to do with making your body and your life a more balanced place.
Yes, you see, we start with a very fundamental question, a simple fundamental question. There's actually a couple of them, but here's one fundamental question. Are you worth investing in yourself? Because when people say to me, it takes too much time, I'm just too busy, I don't have time to invest in myself, I point out that if you don't invest in yourself now, you're going to be investing in the hospital soon. Mm-hmm. And on the other hand, if you're willing to make some changes in your kitchen, in your bedroom, in your personal care, in your environment, you can up the good stuff and down the bad stuff dramatically by choice, by changing your habits of daily living. And that's what we've been doing for the last 3.5 decades. And we're grateful that personalized medicine is becoming a very popular aspect of tomorrow's care. Mm-hmm. But we've been laying the groundwork for that for decades. And we stand on the shoulders of giants who came before us, who all pointed out that the way in which we educate professionals is to focus downstream on the catastrophes, the symptoms, and the symptom suppressive care. We need a curriculum that evokes human healing responses in evidence-based and safer ways. And that means using nature, nurture, and wholeness. But it also means coming to know ourselves. And we come to know ourselves in part by sending 1 ounce of blood, which is not very much. And you send it overnight to our lab from most anywhere. As long as we can get it in 24 hours, we can then culture the cells ex vivo. So we pioneered using a functional lab test to look at you as a person, mm-hmm. just as the reactions happen in your body, ex vivo, not in vitro, not in the test tube, not an artifact of the laboratory, but a true ex vivo cell culture. So we pioneered the first one-step, high-precision white blood cell called lymphocyte, and it's a lymphocyte response assay. It's not just, are there any lymphocytes here? It's what are the lymphocytes responding to in terms of foods and preservatives, medications and environmental substances, even danders, hair, and feathers if you want to be tested more comprehensively. And what we do is work far upstream. So we look at the causes. We don't diagnose the consequences. We know there are many consequences, but we want to look decades ahead at what is what you are intolerant to, what your body reacts against. And specifically in regard to breast implants, we know for sure that breast implants are foreign to the body. So there's a non-specific burden or a non-specific upregulation of the human immune system just by putting anything foreign inside your body, including a silicone breast implant.
Yeah, even a a pacemaker or a knee replacement. Yeah.
Anything foreign. And very often we know that there are certain adaptations we have to make. If you have a pacemaker or a stent, you'll probably be on a blood thinner. And then there are many misunderstandings about being away from essential nutrients if you're on blood thinners. But I was a coagulationist. I was a blood clotting expert before I became an immunologist. And I keep people on the nutrients they need, and then you adjust the blood thinner as needed based on people being on a consistent diet that includes all of the needed vitamins, B complex, vitamin K, vitamin D. You need all of them. And if you take them in on a consistent basis, then you adjust, if needed, the blood thinner or the anticoagulant to meet that person's need. Because if you don't, your bones are going to melt away. If you don't, your body isn't going to renew itself. These are essential nutrients for the body to repair itself. And yes, many colleagues say take none a day, but that's out of their ignorance, not out of their wisdom.
So with that in mind, you're talking about blood thinners. Have you ever been able to help someone get off blood thinners and get on vitamin E, natural vitamin E that acts like a blood thinner?
Well, yes, I do recommend all 8 forms of natural vitamin E, the tocopherols and the tocotrienols. And yes, my mom, who had an aortic valve replaced and was therefore on Coumadin, a blood thinner, did call me up and started the conversation with, she has heard that Dr. Jaffe, and by the way, when your mother refers to you in the third person, you know it's going to be a complex conversation, that she had heard that Dr. Jaffe gets people off anticoagulants. I don't do that. What I do is keep people on the essential nutrients that they need. B complex, ascorbate, vitamins E, all 8 forms, etc., including vitamin K and vitamin D. And then you adjust the anticoagulant to meet certain goals. In regard to Coumadin, it's called an INR test. Some of the other blood thinners don't require testing, but I do think you should know if the blood thinner is working effectively or under-effectively, too little or too much, because in life, it's almost always the Goldilocks scenario. Not too little, not too much, in the middle, just right.
Okay, so for people that, of course, using the advice of your doctor who shares your vision to go naturally, and it's a natural vitamin E as opposed to a synthetic vitamin E, right, Dr. Jaffe?
Oh, no, absolutely. Absolutely. Let me be very clear that the synthetic workalikes, for example, the most common form of vitamin E is one of the 8 forms, but it has no benefit for the heart. And many people who are taking vitamin E want healthy blood vessels. They want a healthy brain and heart. And therefore, you need gamma tocopherol, to be technical for a minute. You need all 8 forms of the tocopherols and tocotrienols, which is what we have used and only have used for the last decades. So when you use the natural forms, which are harder to get and a little more expensive, you have a much safer, more effective supplement to restore the essential needs of the body. Essential means we can't make them. We have to take them in from the outside. So the workalikes, the synthetic forms of nutrients, in my opinion, fail. They are not safer and they are not more effective. What they are is cheaper and have very long shelf lives. Well, I don't care how long your shelf life is, and I don't care, that you're cheaper. I want the safer natural forms of nutrients always. And the evidence, hundreds, maybe thousands of scientific articles that we have in our archives, all confirm that when you respect Mother Nature, she rewards you. And when you try to fool Mother Nature, say by using a synthetic supplement, you're the one who ends up on the short end of that value proposition.
Yeah. And I just remember one time I was watching the news and they announced how vitamin E wasn't good. And of course, what they don't reveal is the vitamin E they tested was a synthetic vitamin E. And they talked about, I forget what was the condition that they were testing.
Well, there are several such studies. There is the one that's most reported in the literature is from Scandinavia, where people who were smokers and at risk of lung cancer were given synthetic beta-carotene, not all 8 carotenoids, and they were given what I thought was a modest dose of synthetic vitamin E. And after a few years, they looked and found very little benefit, if any, and maybe even some evidence of harm. And let me agree with that. If you give a form of vitamin E in larger amounts that dilutes the beneficial gamma tocopherol that nurtures your heart, that's not good. Now, the headline in the newspaper, including the New York Times, was take none a day. But if you read the article carefully, what it says is avoid the synthetic form, but take the natural form. And there were 2 brothers in Canada in the 1950s and 60s. They were named Shute. They happened to be named the Shute brothers. And they gave people 3,600 units of natural vitamin E, 3,600 IU in some cases, and had a dramatic reduction in cardiovascular risk and disease.
Wow.
So I don't think everyone needs that much,
No.
but it is safe to take that much. And it is a safer and more effective form that we should always use. Use the natural form, seek out those companies that want you to know that they go to the trouble of using the natural form.
Absolutely. Okay, so this is what happened to us, Dr. Jaffe, when we talked. We went all over. We talked about everything and anything because you can do that. And I told you we're going to have many, many, many classes with you. And today we're talking about the LRA Elisa Act. This is one of the last things I did prior to my explantation surgery because I wanted to see the condition of my blood and when it
Your
came
immune
to
system.
Yes. And so for those of you who are just joining us, because I know that sometimes you're late to the classroom, that's okay. If you have a question, type in a Q, write your question down. So again, Dr. Jaffe, let's talk about allergies and the way that we respond, because I'd love for you to talk about this testing and who would want to take this. Why would somebody reach out and say, oh, I want to have this blood work? And by the way, I believe that we're giving one, your group is giving one away. So be the 10th person to send me a message on Lillian's radio show, and you will get this particular test as well. So listen up. That's Lillian's radio show. Instant message me, and you will win if you're the 10th person. Okay, so who would want to do this testing? Why would I want to take this test?
Yeah, you would want to take this test if you want to know what you're tolerant to and what you're reactive against. Because anything that your body reacts against as a foreign invader, including foods that are partially digested, because most people don't have perfect digestion. Many people have inflammatory conditions, which are really repair deficit conditions. And so anyone with an inflammatory repair deficit condition would want to tune up and restore tolerance in their immune system. They would want to take in more of the good essential nutrients and reduce their exposure to immune toxic foods and chemicals. And they would want to do it in a comprehensive way, which has to do with the thinking and doing part, as well as the eating and drinking part. And for those who want to take action, there are 4 self-assessments, like what is your digestive transit time, what is your urine pH or acid alkaline status after rest. That gives you a measure of minerals in the cells. You also can measure your hydration status. Most of us need a glass of water more than we're taking. You should be peeing every couple of hours when you're awake. And then there's the C cleanse to determine how much oxidative burden and toxic burden you're under by determining how much antioxidant you need to cleanse. And we call that the C cleanse. So we start with these simple 4 self-assessments. Then we recommend that folks go on to predictive biomarkers that cover all of epigenetics and can show them where they're at risk years to decades before catastrophe, years to decades before chronic illness robs you of your quality of life. So we work very far upstream at the causes of good and ill health. We want to appreciate where people are resilient and strong, but we also want to show them where they're at risk years to decades before problems occur that we would call chronic ill health, inflammatory, or self-attacking autoimmune illness.
Okay, very good. So some of the recommendations on here and some of the assessments that were made, and I kept talking to Jayashri about this, and I just didn't quite understand, and perhaps maybe I will today.
Yes.
But some of the things that it said that I was non-reactive to, if I eat it, I will have a hive. Like last night, I was told I was in this test that I didn't have to worry about almonds. And
Right.
I ate a lot of the treats that Kim Kirshner made,
Uh-huh.
delicious treats with almonds in it. I thought, oh, okay, I'm non-responsive. And then the next thing you know, I have a response. So let's talk about the
Yeah.
differences,
Right.
and so that we become aware of what this test does and what others test do.
Right. So we're now going back to the 1960s, where Gell and Coombs defined 4 different types of immune reactions or allergic reactions. You're talking about hives, wheezes, itching, anaphylactic reactions, and those are known as type 1. Those are what we do not measure because, frankly, your history can tell you about that. If you get stung by the bee and get hives or anaphylactic shock, I say you have a reaction to bee venom. Now, having an acute type 1 IgE-mediated reaction is completely different from the hard-to-detect delayed reactions, which is what the LRA by Elisa Act is designed to do, and we do it very reproducibly and precisely, and we have been reporting over the decades, outcome study after outcome study, and quality control superiority, because as a one-step cell culture, we do reproducible tests with less than 3% variance, which means we're very consistent. And then we put ourselves to the test by doing community-based best effort outcome studies to restore tolerance in people with type 1 and type 2 diabetes, fibromyalgia, muscle pain, adrenal dysfunction. And we have a model, an approach that works for all of the autoimmune, all of the chronic ill health, all of the inflammatory or repair deficit conditions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so it has very, very, very detailed dyes and foods and chemicals.
Yes.
But a delayed reaction,
Yeah.
how does a delayed reaction benefit me? And learning the delayed reaction, should we first find out what the immediate reaction is and then do the delayed? Can we do both with this test?
Well, it's very interesting. My colleague Susan Brown and others have noticed over the many years that if you follow our approach, starting with the delayed reactions and implement what we suggest over 6 months or so, that your seasonal or immediate type 1 allergies tend to go away on their own. So yes, you can separately measure by skin test or RAS test the immediate reactors, or you can do what we recommend, which is restore tolerance and eat the food you can digest, assimilate, and eliminate without immune burden. And you're right, we test for the largest number of foods and preservatives because as a protein biochemist, we actually purify all of our own antigens. And that's part of why our procedure is so much more precise, reproducible, and clinically meaningful than other tests that just measure, say, IgG antibodies. Because if you have an antibody, your body recognizes that something foreign got into you. If you have a healthy antibody, it neutralizes and helps you. If you have an unhealthy antibody or a complement fixing or a reactive antibody, that can harm you. So in the past, doctors looked at serum, they looked at antibodies in serum like IgG, and they got confused. Because you need to distinguish helpful from harmful antibodies. You need to do this in the way nature does it, ex vivo, the way our cell culture works. And then it turns out there are different kinds of white blood cells. There are these lymphocytes that are B class, they produce antibodies. And then there are T class lymphocytes, just a different class. But the T class doesn't need antibodies. That reacts to something foreign directly. And so you need a cell culture to pick up the T cells. You want to get immune complexes, that's the type 3 reactions, and you want to distinguish harmful from helpful antibodies. Those are the so-called type 2 reactions. So we're looking at the hard to detect delayed, and by delayed I mean anywhere from 3 hours to 3 weeks after you get exposed, now you get the symptoms. the serum sickness, the Schwarzen reactions, the Arthus reactions, etc. Very well known in clinical immunology, not well known in the general medical community. And that's why we also train and certify physicians through the PIH Academy, the Perk Integrative Health Academy. We help physicians come into the 21st century and health coaches come into the 21st century with information and news that you can apply so that you can restore health years to decades before chronic ill health takes a big toll.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. So you give suggestions for diet, you give suggestions for supplements, you give suggestions for alternatives.
Lifestyle, attitude, and environment are important.
Yeah.
Yes, you can do things. And since we have now, I think it's over 80,000 cases in our database, and we have a standardized health appraisal questionnaire. We call it an HAQ, a health appraisal questionnaire. And if you take a few minutes to fill out the questionnaire and send us the 1 ounce of blood or so, we can do hundreds of cell cultures very reproducibly, very precisely. And we're grateful for the opportunity to serve and help people restore good health to themselves.
Absolutely. And if you are interested, my teacher's pets that are here watching Dr. Jaffe, if you send me a message, an IM that you want this test, then the 10th message that I receive will win a free evaluation. Okay. So I also got this little, yes, I got it here. I got it here.
Thank you. Yes.
Yes.
And by the way, what you're showing is a plasticized card about the size of a credit card, something you can put in your purse or wallet. You can put it on your refrigerator if you want. That's where I keep mine. And this is helpful when you go shopping, because for me right now, tomatoes, which are generally a healthy food, although actually they're a fruit, but I react to tomatoes. And I like tomatoes, but they don't like me right now. And it actually confirmed to me how accurate the test is, how specific the test is, because I eat out of my own garden. I have a permaculture biodynamic food forest in our front yard, started by my son 8 years ago. And I would have 1 pickle and 1 tomato from the garden for lunch almost every day when they were growing and I could go out and pick them. Well, it turns out pickles and I get along just fine. And I ate as many pickles as I ate tomatoes. So it wasn't the fact that I was eating tomatoes that caused the reaction, but tomatoes are very specifically something that I substitute for a few months so that my body can restore tolerance, and then I can reintroduce them safely and as a source of nourishment, not a source of immune intoxication.
And so that's the suggestion. You suggest that 3 to 6 months that you avoid these foods or have very little of the food.
No. Avoid to the full extent you can. Lower the burden. Substitute, because if you give yourself permission to cheat, you'll know you're cheating. And that's an adverse mind-body interaction. On the other hand, you don't have to be perfect. And if we had to be perfect, none of us would be alive. So, you're not going to be perfect, and don't hold yourself to such a high standard, that you stress yourself out over the high standard. On the other hand, be aware that you can influence your future. The past is behind us, but your future is determined by healthier habits. And we tell you the ones that people in your situation most likely have benefited from over the decades that we have been observing and getting interaction from colleagues. And we do have a clearinghouse if folks want to contact us through you or through our own drrusselljaffe.com or elisaact.com, websites that have information and guidance so that people can do a deeper dive, if you will, into what we're talking about.
Yes, absolutely. And so I received this little card, and on there are, for the food and drug, the different things that I need to strongly react, moderately react, and what was the other one? I think it was food groups.
Yes, food groups. So moderate reactions, you substitute at least 3 months, strong reactions 6 months while your body is restoring tolerance. And yes, we have found that in a sense, birds of a feather flock together. So sometimes we find an entire family of foods, nightshade foods, or all of the dairy products, or all of the sugars, to be causes of immune burden. And then we suggest avoiding the group. You're sweet enough as you are. You don't need to add empty calorie sugar to your diet. And I can tell you that since I have been following and practicing what I'm preaching, my hemoglobin A1C has been consistently less than 5%, which means I don't have the usual risks that people at my age do of cardiovascular, stroke, and atherosclerotic problems.
That's wonderful. And the thing about this testing is that because it's a delayed response, you really don't know. I had a delayed response to wheat until it became a reaction. Right. And I have avoided wheat for 20 plus years. And I've avoided dairy for 20 plus years. And now my body says, okay, I don't have a delayed reaction, but I do have an immediate reaction. So I need to be careful with how we interpret this. And this was so wonderful to have, to have your coaches help through the process. Okay, so
we do that as a part of our service because we want people to understand. When people understand what we're asking and why it really applies to them and why it can save their life, they're more likely to follow through.
Yes.
So this is part of our system. Most laboratories just give you a result and let you figure out what it means. We know that there's a lot of information here, and we want to synthesize it, summarize it, and make it functionally available to people so that on the one hand, they know all the foods that they are okay with, all the substances their immune system is okay with, but the ones that they need to substitute, how to do that, and then how to repair and rebuild your digestion, your metabolism, etc.
Yes, yes. And so what I thought was fascinating and very, very helpful, Dr. Jaffe, this is just my feedback to this test, was that you guys got to see some of the things that I respond to that have a immediate or strong response that I didn't even know. Like, for example, there is a substitute to dairy called carrageenan.
Right. Now that's a fiber. It gives you the mouth feel, and it's commonly found in desserts, in ice creams, and other confections. And for people who are sensitive, that's an immune burden.
Yes.
And you correctly identified there are certain foods that are just generally hard to digest. And in the 21st century, many of us need to take in the foods that are easy to digest. So let me say first the foods that are hard to digest and that I try to avoid as much as possible. It's what you said. All of the grains, starting with wheat, but all of the grains, cow dairy, and flesh, meat. Partly it's because of how the animals are fed, partly it's because how they're processed, partly it's because how they've been manipulated, and I mean the grains and the GMOs and the glyphosates and so forth. On the other hand, if you want to eat easy to digest, assimilate, and eliminate foods, the easy to digest, assimilate, and eliminate foods are grasses, that's like millet and quinoa, and wild rice, which is different than rice. And among other reasons why you don't want to eat rice is the arsenic that has found its way into the rice. So wild rice, yes. Other grasses, yes, including buckwheat and millet and so forth. Lots of fruits and vegetables. Eat low on the food chain, but eat the foods that are easy to digest, assimilate, and eliminate. Know what your digestive transit time is. A healthy digestive transit time is 12 to 18 hours. What you eat at night should come out in the morning. When I have roast beets for dinner, I see red in the commode in the morning. And I will tell you, after all these years, the first time I see red in the commode, I don't think about beets, So that's why we use charcoal.
I'm burning to death. Yes. Okay, so I just want to focus on this because it's so helpful. A lot of the dairy substitutes, and of course, as you guys know, I don't eat. And by the way, for those of you who are just tuning in, and I know that you guys have some questions, we're doing the ELISA test, LRA by ELISA Act test results. We're talking about that. And if you are interested in getting a free test, Dr. Jaffe is being so generous. He is giving one away to the 10th message that I get on IM. That's at Lillian's radio show. Some of you are calling me. That's fine too. I'll add you to 407-373-5959 if you want to call. You can also get in the queue. I'll check and see when you sent your message. But this was really eye-opener, because this includes dyes. It includes chemicals. Like, I learned that I was allergic to a chemical in my hair color.
Aha.
And I thought it was the wheat or the dairy, or the wheat that they put in there, or maybe if I had something that didn't have any ammonia, then that would be good. But the polyglycol, or I think that's the name of it, it was, I couldn't believe it. And so
and these polysorbates and others, and thank you for highlighting this. One of the unique parts of our lab is we do, in the report, as you're holding it up correctly, provide hidden places where you might get exposed in personal care products or in processed foods for what we're talking about, in this case, polysorbate 80, which is, by the way, in a lot of personal care products. And yes, you would think that your toothpaste or your shampoo or your conditioner wouldn't get into your body, but yes, they do. And that is why we have a 12-hour period right before the blood is taken of water only. You can have as much water as you want, but only water, and even personal care products to be avoided in that 12-hour period, because they can cause false positive reactions by briefly riling up your immune system. And I do appreciate that you've been so straightforward and candid, and this is a HIPAA-compliant Zoom call, so we can talk. We can talk personally.
Oh, yes, yes.
And it's all correct.
Okay.
So thank you, but thank you for pointing out some of the functional, some of the very personalized pieces of the program that we have put together so that people can save their lives or the lives of the people they love in the 21st century, which is a very different time than even the 20th century.
Yeah, and it's affordable test that you can choose for yourself that will help minimize, because a delayed reaction, you know, I hear so many people say, I'm not allergic to anything, and they're morbidly obese. Obviously, something is causing inflammation more than just, and it could be that they're eating a little bit too much, or it could be
it could be a
eating.
Hyperactive fork. It can be a hyperactive fork. However, very often people have weight management problems because they have imbalances in their neurohormones and in their defense and repair system. And that's where we can help people add life to years, go to their lean weight. And I think it's Rick Warren, he's a minister, who points out that over the many years, he gained a couple of pounds a year while he was serving his community and doing meaningful work. And then he looked at himself in the mirror one day and he wiggled a little bit, and his tummy was wiggling long after he stopped. And like him, I have lost 65 pounds that I somehow accumulated and I will not find again. And it takes more than 20 minutes after you lose the weight before the hunger stops. But a little self-discipline, eating foods that you can digest, assimilate, and eliminate, eating whole foods, including seeds and nuts and high fiber foods, eating foods that are nutritious and delicious, but are not processed. If you come to my home, which you're welcome to do, you'll see the garden, you'll see the mushroom guilds in the back, you'll see that inside in the kitchen, we have lots of whole foods, easy to prepare, but very little package. When you go for convenience, you end up at a loss.
Yes.
When you say you don't have time to take care of yourself, you're preparing for the time when someone else is going to have to treat you. And my suggestion is evoke your healing response as soon as you're aware that you have one. Be aware that what we learned about our body being a machine is just not true.
Correct.
Your stomach is more than a food processor. Your intestines are more than a trash compactor. And you're right, even professionals have to relearn a functional, a holistic, a patient-centered, a personalized and evidence-based approach, which is what we and others have been pioneering for decades and actually rediscovering, because there is literature, global though it is, that is highly relevant when you start looking at evoking healing responses rather than just symptom reactive care.
Yes. And, think about children that have responses to food, and we're thinking that they're hyperactive, and they could be like, I found out that I respond to blue number one.
Aha.
Fortunately for me, I don't have a lot of processed foods. I eat a whole food diet,
Yes.
but I was given something the other day
Ah,
and it had yellow in it. And I had said, that's a moderate response to me. And I'm like,
right.
I'm not eating this. And I felt
Well,
it.
see, you could have become sensitive many years ago and still have that sensitization or sensitivity
Mhm.
until we restored tolerance. And sometimes it needs a second 6-month cycle because you don't become 100% well the first day you start this comprehensive program. But yes, we want you and others to outgrow their delayed and immediate immune intolerances, immune reactions, restore healthy digestive competence, because if you really have healthy digestion, then you break foods down to non-reactive simple building blocks and you build yourself back up. If your cells are energetic, they have recycling centers called lysosomes, and if something foreign gets in your body, it immediately gets taken up into one of those recycling centers called the lysosome, broken down to building blocks that the cells and body can use to build you back up. So most of us are marginal or deficient in the good stuff, the essential nutrients. We have too much burden of the anti-nutrients, the oxidative stresses of high-tech living, and we can choose more intelligently for us as individuals based on our biochemical individuality as reflected in these predictive biomarkers, including the LRA by ELISA ACT test.
Yes. And so I want to encourage everybody to know, all of you who are watching and who will watch later on, whether it's on Facebook, YouTube, or the podcast, because we're recording for the podcast and we on audio, but on video, it's for Facebook and YouTube. We can take our health back. As you know, my registered service mark is you can take a pill, you can take responsibility. It's not that I'm against the pill. I am for doing everything you can. And where do we do this? We do it at whenyouneedafriend.com. And so I want to encourage all of you to subscribe to whenyouneedafriend.com. When you do that, you get free gifts. And also, you can't do this alone. Thank God that I had this, because all these dairy substitutes can kind of creep into your life. And that's just one of the many things that I was reacting to, but I didn't even know, because you think it's healthy. And so because we are a thumbprint, like a droplet of water, not one alike, what works uniquely for me may not work what's uniquely for you. Stop the guesswork, get back to the roadmap to health, and this is what it helps. But what I'm trying to say is this is information that you don't get on television. You don't get it on mainstream radio. And the reason why is because it's not profitable, because you won't have to take a pill. You can reverse dis-ease in many different ways: spirit, mind, and body. So I want to encourage you to check out my sponsors and click onto my sponsors page and support them, like Liberty Health Share, Keep Me Safe Organics, beauty products. They're worldwide, and you can get 10% off. So these are all, if you check out and play, you'll find out that you get some discounts as well. First Alternative Care, Dr. Stephen Grable, Functional Integrative in Jacksonville, and the pharmacy in Merritt Island. You let them know that I sent you. You get 20% off your order. Live Longer Medical, helping you. That's Lisa Geyer, helping you from the inside out. What a small world. We're so connected. And to find out that even Dr. Jaffe and I were connected through Lisa, it's just amazing. And then, of course, support them the way that they're supporting the classroom. Without them, there would be no classroom. There'd be no classroom. And of course, you as the enrolled student, you could help by helping share and grow and like and follow on my social media and all those things that you can do. And you can provide financial support as well. So go to the enrolled student. So we're all in this together. It's amazing how one little blood test can tell me some of the things that I didn't even know I didn't know. And so that's why I wanted to have Dr. Jaffe on today, not just to promote this, but to also make you aware that this is a part of, or could be a part of, your health and your healing. So I want to encourage you to go to elisaact.com. If you're a subscriber, you have all that information already in the blog. And so because you are with us as a teacher's pet and watching interactive, we're going to do a question and answer, and all of you who are not live can join us at Lillian's radio show so that we can do our question and answer session. So get your questions ready. 10th caller or texter or instant message will get a free copy of this blood work. Dr. Jaffe, you're an amazing man. I'm looking forward to multiple conversations with you and how to restore our health. Thank you. And for those of you who are wanting to learn more, stay tuned because we have more questions for Dr. Jaffe. Please remember, this is Lillian McDermott wishing you love, peace, joy, and unexpected abundance. Make it the best day
The opinions
ever.
and advice expressed on the Lillian McDermott radio show are intended for the individual callers and guests on the program and are presented to our wider audience solely for general educational purposes. Please act responsibly and consult personally with your own medical, psychological, or nutritional expert before taking any steps to improve your life.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Jaffe. That was a quick, we still didn't even dip the toe on this test. There's so much more. I love all the suggestions and where we can find that particular ingredient. And so that is invaluable.
And how to substitute.
Yes.
For example, carrageenan is one of many fibers, but there are other ones that you may be tolerant to. So it isn't a matter of a life of deprivation. It's rather an intelligent decision to choose well and wisely what for you is immune tolerant.
Yes. Okay. So as I'm looking down, I want to say hello to Galina and Victoria and Gabby and Kathy. And so I think I answered your question, Kathy, that the test is that we're talking about today is the LRA Elisa Act, and you can go to elisaact.com, and this is what the test results look like. It's a nice little binder so that you can keep, and then they also give you a nice little card, which I wish I've had for my immediate allergies.
Right.
It's a different test, but this is a great one to use as a guidance so that if you forget about it, you have it in your wallet with your credit cards. Or your debit card, sorry. And so the 10th instant message or texter at 407-373-5959. I will look at the time the text came in. I look at the time the instant message came in. The 10th one will get a free test so that you too can find out what's unique for you, some of the things that are causing inflammation in the body. And so with the test results and the substitution, that was invaluable because I eat primarily whole food plant-based, and once in a while, you know, we're not perfect. I eat about 90% well, but that 10%, I'm gonna choose the things I want. But if I know that there are certain, like that, the carrageenan, I started looking at all the dairy substitutes that I had that are like little quick hacks, and they were affecting my body.
Yes.
And so it's amazing. And so let's talk about the suggestions, Dr. Jaffe, and how to eliminate these foods, because you even have that. Would you like to suggest how that comes about and how that helps the body?
Well, sure. When you get exposed to things that aren't being broken down completely, they are foreign to the body. It is like draining your battery. It is like diverting your vitality. It is like a weight on your metabolism. Now, today we talk about the microbiome, which is really digestion, and we talk about the metabolome, which is really metabolism. And when you have a healthy microbiome, which, by the way, less than 1 in 20 people in America today has a healthy digestion, a healthy microbiome. In fact, almost all of us need to rehabilitate our digestive tract, which is part of our program. So we build in many life-saving safer and effective approaches to rebalancing, restoring, rehabilitating, enhancing your intake of the good essential nutrients and reducing your exposure to the bad, harmful anti-nutrients. And it is amazing how much you can do to reduce your burden. Over 80% of the toxins you get exposed to are of recent exposure. And you can choose a slightly different lifestyle that dramatically reduces your exposure to persisting hormone disruptors and solvent residues and toxic metals and mold products and radioisotopes. All of these are part of our 21st century life. We marinate in a sea of toxic chemicals, anti-nutrients.
Yes.
So we want to up our game. We want to increase the essential nutrient intake, but specifically of foods that we can digest, assimilate, and eliminate. And usually that means more whole and less packaged, more lower on the food chain, but more nutritious and delicious. So we don't sacrifice taste and flavor. In fact, we use lots of herbs and spices and seeds and nuts as part of our salads or part of our entrees. And therefore, we don't need the processing chemicals that really fool your tongue and then dismember your digestive tract. Mm-hmm. And remember, you have a gut nervous system that's constantly talking to your central nervous system through something called the vagus nerve, which I was taught only went from your brain to your gut and your brain to your body. But now we know it's a bidirectional highway that is really very important in maintaining equilibrium, tolerance, resilience, balance, quality of sleep, restorative sleep, mood stability, little things like that.
You know, also metals and toxins. I've had Dr. Joe Pizzorno in the classroom, and he, you know, has made us aware of the toxic metals in the body. And so with that in mind, with this ELISA ACT test, do we see the metals that are in our body or the metals that we respond to negatively?
Well, there's two sides to this. So toxic metals are by definition toxic. That means lead, mercury, nickel, cadmium, and arsenic and similar. But then you can become hypersensitive to a toxic metal. So we test for the largest number of metals, but we're looking only for the hypersensitivity, the delayed reactions. And we do want you to reduce your toxic mineral exposure while also doing biological and cellular house cleaning. So if you use ascorbate based on the C cleanse, if you take in high sulfur foods that are biologically detoxifying of toxic metals, and here I mean garlic, ginger, onions, brassica sprouts, and eggs, one or more of those should be a staple in your diet, as Thomas Jefferson used to say. You should make staples out of condiments and condiments out of staples. That's what Jefferson used to say.
I'm telling you, I love my garlic. When I get a sore throat, start sucking on garlic, and that just is a wonderful thing. Dr. Jaffe.
Let me just interject there if I may.
Okay.
When we serve garlic, what we often do is take the whole bulb of garlic and we roast it. And it comes out like custard, but each individual gets an entire bulb of garlic to enjoy. Not just one little clove.
How long do you roast it? Because I've never...
We're really serious about these biological detoxifying agents. The amount of toxic metals that everyone is exposed to every day is about 20 micrograms, which may not sound like much, but I saw a hearing once on Capitol Hill where a Center for Disease Control pediatrician was asked, "Doctor, what is the safe level for mercury or lead in the blood?" And she paused for a moment and she said, "Senator, when we see it in the blood, it's too late. There's already been harm to the brain, harm to the body, harm to the liver and spleen, harm to the kidney and heart. So we really need to do biological house cleaning on a daily basis, just so we won't accumulate these toxic metals." And yes, you can use D-penicillamine on top of that if you need to, both to assess essential and toxic metals. That's a different test available through Better Lab tests now. The D-penicillamine provocation, it's a protocol we developed. So you can find out if you have a burden of toxic metals. You can find out if you have a sensitivity to these toxic metals, as we're talking about, LRA by ELISA ACT test and D-penicillamine provocation. And then you can bring in the magnesium, the ascorbate, the zinc, and the natural substances that displace toxic metals and help safely remove them from the body. Notice I said safely and more safe, because you could move these toxic metals around and harm yourself. Don't do that. Chaperone them out by wrapping around them ascorbate or complexing them with sulfur molecules that you might find in garlic or onions or ginger or brassica sprouts, that's broccoli sprouts, or eggs. And yes, I do prefer biodynamic sources. Goose, chicken, and quail eggs are often available in Whole Foods type of markets. Chicken eggs, be a little careful. If you don't know what the chicken was eating, you don't know what's in the egg. On the other hand, eggs are generally whole foods that are meant to help the body stay healthy, as long as we're not sensitive to, say, and many people are, which is why we recommend goose, duck, and quail eggs more than chicken eggs.
Interesting. So Dr. Jaffe, Victoria she shared, and she made a statement, but I think we need to address this. She said, my daughter-in-law has recently become allergic to soy, which is in everything. So that was a statement she made. Are we allergic to soy, or are we allergic to the glyphosates, or the way they've altered soy?
Well, that's exactly right. A soybean today is not what a soybean was 100 years ago. And yes, in packaged foods, in processed foods, there are many ways in which soy creeps in. So yes, many people are exposed regularly to processed soy, processed corn, processed wheat. Now, if you come to my home, you'll find no soy because we don't need it. We do use Celtic sea salt, which has multiple trace minerals as well as macro minerals like magnesium. We do have enhanced uptake magnesium with choline citrate, a unique way of enhancing the uptake and chaperoning delivery, and then correcting the choline deficit that many people have, because you need a liquid bile from cholinergic bile salts. You need acetylcholine in your brain to keep your mood stable and see things as opportunities, not as dangers. And then you need choline itself at the membrane of the cell to balance out inositol as a communication molecule. So we have pioneered at the molecular level safer and effective approaches to getting the good stuff in and the bad stuff out, starting with toxic metals.
And the coaching that you get, like with, getting this results was like, oh my gosh. And I was so glad that one of your health coaches, and I had mentioned her name, Jayashree, she did a beautiful job to helping out, but it's still overwhelming to know, okay, we're going to corral this metals and we're going to use this and we're going to use that. So do you use their coaching throughout, or how does it?
There are many ways that different colleagues do it. So we train health coaches to work with their clients. We train physicians so that they can get smart quick about these issues that they didn't learn about in their residency or in their medical education. So we work with people where they are. We work with anyone who wants to survive and thrive in the 21st century. So we do have certain classes. We have the PERC Integrative Health Academy, where people can come on a modular basis, a self-paced basis, and get certified in this information that will save your life and add life to years and years of life. And yes, the reason that we provide the routine follow-up consultation is because most people, when they get our report back, they've never seen anything as comprehensive as this. They're kind of intrigued with what's there, but it would help if someone would orient them, if someone would make them smart quickly about the opportunity to add life to years and years to life by what you choose to eat and drink, think and do, because it is about those four categories: eating and drinking, thinking and doing, because 92% of your lifetime quality of health is epigenetic, lifestyle, and habit-based. So when you change your habits, you change your future.
I love that.
And I understand that people say, it runs in my family, whatever it is, heart disease, breast cancer, something. Well, it runs in your family largely because of habits that get passed down from generation to generation.
Recipes.
So forth,
the recipes is what runs it.
Including recipes. A friend of mine sent me 100 recipes that he collected from his grandparents, almost none of which I would eat because they have too much salt, fat, and sugar. They are yummy. It's not that they're not yummy. It's just they're not nutritious as well as delicious. And I want both because
You can have
at
both.
this, well, you can
Yeah.
have both. And at this phase of my life, even with my 10,000 steps a day, I get about 2,000 calories. So every calorie I interrogate, and a few of those calories are probably going to be Prosecco or a San Emilion. So every physical calorie, whether it's a soup or a salad, whether it's an entree or not, needs to be nutrient dense and uncontaminated. And that's why I prefer biodynamic as super organic. Organic is acceptable. Commercial is no longer acceptable for the reasons you said correctly. We can talk about the many reasons why soy today has been processed to the point where it's no longer the healthy food that it used to be, whether it's the phytoestrogens or the glyphosate, whether it's the genetic manipulation, or it's the fact that you now have twice as much simple sugar and half as much protein in the soy, in the corn, in the wheat, commercially available today, whereas the heritage strains, the traditional strains that were available to our grandparents, were the staff of life.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. Okay, I have another question from Glenda. And so, Glenda, thank you so much for your question. Would hearing your heartbeat and high-pitched like electricity in your ear constantly be an allergic reaction? Is that tinnitus?
Well, it could be tinnitus. And yes, anytime any part of you is chronically unwell, it's because you're not being repaired. Now, I can't speak specifically to Glenda because I don't know her well enough, but it sounds like she should be working with a knowledgeable, functional professional, whether it's a health coach who is familiar with that specific set of situations. And yes, you should be able to feel your pulse at your wrist. You should be able to feel your heart gently beating inside your chest. If your heart is jumping out of your chest, go and see someone. If you're hearing a high-pitched sound or something that is distracting and might impair your the quality of your restorative sleep and so forth, yes, this is a sign that your body is talking to you and it wants your attention. And if you pay attention now, you'll be rewarded. And if you don't, it will get your attention in an even stronger way. So thank you for the question, Glenda.
Yeah.
And yes, by all means, take action.
And that's one thing is, I pride myself in learning from many of the people that surround me. I love to learn from them. When someone says they've done this and they call it a mistake, and I'm like, well, it's really not a mistake. It's an opportunity to grow. It's
Right.
an opportunity to learn. So I've learned from many, many teachers in my life. And so unfortunately, sometimes we have to have a 2x4 hit us over the forehead or a health crisis. And many times when people say, oh, I converted to a whole food plant-based diet, or now I've reduced my intake of meat, or thank you for the information that we've heard in the classroom. And what I'm glad that they're shifting their life. But what I ask is for those of us who are learning from our teachers, saying, why do I have to wait until there's a crisis to dig deeper and to change it? So these are very preventative tools.
Yes, these are health promotion. These are highly predictive, personalized, proactive prevention practices and protocols. My teachers pointed out that usually we get an invitation that is very subtle and gentle.
It's a whisper.
That a whisper, the still small voice, there are lots of ways of describing it, and we ignore it. Mm-hmm. And then we say, how come we got hit by a 2x4? So one way of explaining this is that many of us are burdened by what are called afflictive responses. Mm-hmm. Afflictive responses means you're not enjoying the moment because you either regret what you didn't do in the past, or you're preoccupied with things that haven't happened in the future. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you've seen this recently, but His Holiness the Dalai Lama has pointed out that many of the afflictions that we human beings suffer from are self-induced.
They are. I agree.
And the implication is know yourself well enough so that you can balance out your life by investing about 5% of your time in saving your own life. Because if you're healthier, if you're more radiant, if you're more optimistic, and I'm a student of Gardner Murphy, who pioneered positive psychology, and a student of Eckhart Tolle, who points out staying in the now, in the moment, is a very valuable practice to cultivate. And others like Seligman, who teach us about learned optimism. And I particularly like his work because he gets up in academic and other environments and says, the reason I want you to pay attention is because I'm the least optimistic person in the world, and I learned optimism from my own students. So yes, we can change our mind, we can change our habits, we can change our environment. For example, I'm a fairly high-tech person when I'm in my high-tech mode, but back where my bedroom is, we don't even have a Wi-Fi signal, so I don't have to turn anything off. And yes, it's very dark where I sleep because you get more restorative sleep when it's really dark. And if it's not really dark, get a good pair of eye shades. And my friend Dr. Joel Kahn just recently
he's
pointed
been a
out
teacher in the classroom,
that he has a lavender scented pair of iPads or ways of keeping the dark out. So you don't have to spend a lot of time or money. On the other hand, in my world, time is the most precious thing I have. And we didn't talk about it, but I'm now 5+ years after a near-death experience. And there's nothing like being close to death to get your attention and to improve your gratitude when you get up in the morning feeling well after that.
Wow.
And my dad at 83 had a stroke in my living room, and 9 months later, he was perfectly well and ready to go back to his condo in Florida. My teacher, Bhante, who I've kind of mentioned indirectly, at 103, he had a stroke, and we had another 7 years with him till 110. Wow. And then, by the way, when he passed, he had highest frequent flyer status on 3 different airlines. So he was sprightly and out and about. Wow. So we can choose a life of meaningful moments, of low toxicity and high resilience, but we have to give up many of our cherished notions, like convenience, like fast food. How come the fast food makes you sick? How come rush hour, everything slows down? That's an old George Carlin routine. I very much appreciate the chance to have a conversation with you and with your community, with the classroom and the podcast. And yes, on YouTube, I've forgotten how many, but we have numbers of it. If you just look up Dr. Russell Jaffe on YouTube, you'll find lots of conversations about these subjects in either specific detail or in the overview. And the theme is, how do you survive and thrive in the 21st century? How do you save your life and the life of those you love by investing a little bit? I do not have time to indulge myself. But I have plenty of time to invest an hour a day, an hour and a quarter a day, 72 minutes as a quick reminder. And it's made a huge difference, not just for me and my extended family, which includes the people that I train and work with, but it's been a privilege to come as a skeptic and now be an advocate for what I am sure is the medicine of the future. It is a back to the future approach, but it is based on real evidence that you really can save your life when you understand epigenetics and the limitations of genomics, when you understand that you can influence your environment, that you can influence your future by the habits you choose today, and you don't have to make radical transformation an obligation. In fact, it's much more effective to make a small change and appreciate yourself for making that positive change. For example, drink an extra glass of water and be less dehydrated. Mm-hmm. Be good to your kidneys, they'll be good to you. Help your liver get the schmutz and the toxins of high-tech living passed through into the intestines where there's lots of fiber to bind up the toxins so that they don't get reabsorbed. because most of us don't eat enough fiber. We don't take enough probiotics in. We don't take enough symbiotics recycled glutamine. When we do, we get biologically younger. So when tests are done of me today, I mostly test at about half my chronology.
Wow.
And I'm planning to be dancing at 120, and I want my friends with me. So, please join me.
Yeah, Dr. Lorraine Day, I don't know if you know who she is.
Oh, sure.
Well, she is a frequent teacher in the show and in the classroom. And she says that there is a side effect to living a long life is that your friends die. So you deal with death quite a bit. And so she said that she's had to choose younger friends every time. She has to keep going younger and younger and younger because people are dying of diseases that are self-induced. They're self-made.
Well, yes. To compress that into just a few sound bites, over 95% of everything from cardiovascular disease to cancer, from Alzheimer's, senility to, quote, the diseases of old age, are avoidable. We can function much younger than our birth date. With regard to Bhante, the Cambodian gentleman that I was mentioning, when he was 96 and 106, we had very detailed tests done, and he consistently came out as if he was 35 to 40 years of age.
Amazing.
And I would put that information in front of him, and with a little twinkle in his eye, he said things like, 40? That's a good age. And his case is particularly instructive because when he was biologically 40, he was deathly ill. It took him 40 years to get better. He started the work that I knew him when he was 80. And I once asked him whether 80 wasn't a little late to get started. And with a little smile, he said, "Have you not heard of Moses?"
What about Methuselah?
Well, yes. Well, see, back then, we're not quite sure, but back then it appears that people were vital at extended ages. And more recently, there was a very fine clinical researcher at Mass General named Dr. Leaf. And he's the one who went to the Vilcabambas. This is a tribe of native people who have almost no ill health at long lifetimes until they move to the city and take on a processed Western lifestyle and diet. And then they get all the consequences of the same. So there are populations that seem natively to live long and well. My colleague Artemis Simopoulos talks about the Greek Mediterranean diet. I have other colleagues from Japan who talk about whole communities where you have to be 90 years of age just to apply to the community. And most days, almost everyone in the community gets up and does something like Aikido or Tai Chi Chuan or Hatha Yoga, and then they sing before they eat, and they eat together when they choose to, but they're very much alive and living their individual lives, and they do something called forest bathing. Now, forest bathing, you still have your clothes on, but you go out into a mature woods, and you just amble under the green canopy. And if you don't have that, you can use a green dichromatic light, which is something I learned from Bhante, and that he deduced because there was a color healing system that had been taught 2,500 years ago, practiced for 500 years, lost for 2,000 years, and he figured it out and taught it. And that was how I became his student.
Amazing. Okay, so one of the things I wanted to say earlier, and because this is the exact sample of the first conversation that I had with Dr. Jaffe. And that's why I'm telling you, our next conversation, Dr. Jaffe, is going to be the habits for longevity, because you have studied so many different places and give us their tips on what we can do. But here's the thing. Just recently, I mean, you've heard of grounding. A lot of people have heard of grounding. I've been told how important grounding is. And this is one of the things that I am just like so adamant about. Just because I say it, just because you say it, those are our truths. But if you hear it and it resonates, or if you hear it and it just doesn't, research it, make it your truth. And it's not about being right. It's not about being wrong. It's about making it your research, that you heard it and now you cared enough to make it your own truth. So I have heard about grounding for a long time. As a matter of fact, I live near the beach. I used to walk almost daily on the beach, but because of time and because of the surgery, I have slowed down quite a bit. And I've noticed that my body has been kind of breaking down a little bit. And, I've been experiencing some symptoms, and I know I've had the surgery but I don't allow those things to linger on, because if I address the issues right away, it's a little bit, it's like if I know that I've get on the scale and I'm 5 pounds heavier, I know that I've done something to abuse my body. I've indulged my body. And it's easier for me to release 5 pounds than just ignore it. And then 50 pounds later go, where did this happen? So there's different ways that we can look at life. This is how I look at it. So I've learned about grounding for a long time. Last week, I went to an iridology conference, and I met this gentleman. His name is Jim Belisara, and he introduced me to ground therapy. And I'm thinking, well, I do grounding, yeah, for an hour, maybe a week or whatever. But there is it's in my shop now, because I am convinced that this is a missing link. When you're talking about going out in the woods, are you barefoot? Are you laying down on the earth? Is that what you're doing? Are you earthing? Are you grounding?
Yes, because I live out in the woods, I generally walk outside
Free.
barefoot.
And it's free.
Oh, yes. Oh, no, this is absolutely free.
Yes.
With regard to sunbathing, because I live out in the woods and because my neighbors are a little bit distant, I generally am out there the way the good Lord made me, getting some sun. And it turns out that sunscreens create as much skin cancer as
Correct.
they prevent. So
Yes.
I don't use any of the commercial agents. Sometimes I'll put some zinc oxide on children's noses. Sometimes I'll put some sesame oil on dry skin. Selenomethionine turns out to be extremely helpful. And if I can tell you a brief story, I was down in Mexico visiting where gray whales birth, because Amory and Judy Levins had invited my son Sky and I to come on this expedition with them. And we went out in this small boat, and we stayed out too long, and I got red as a lobster. And people said, oh, you should hide under a bushel. We should put some cloth over you, which was very hot because it was the sun. I said, I'm fine. We got back and they said, oh, tonight you're going to be in pain. I said, no, I'm going to go to bed, and in the morning I'm going to have a tan. And they thought I was going to go have a drink. In the morning, I came down to breakfast. I had a nice night's sleep and a tan. When you have enough of the essentials, the selenomethionine, all 8 forms of tocopherols and tocotrienols, when you can transduce that energy and make it helpful to your body, you get a benefit without a risk.
So by taking vitamin E, natural vitamin E?
I take 1,200 units a day of mixed natural vitamins E, that's tocopherols and tocotrienols, 1,200 IU. I get that through my LifeGuard Super Multi-Tabsules, then my MitoGuard, which has CoQ10 and natural tocopherols, all micellized in rice bran oil, and then what we call LiverGuard, which also has some of these essential nutrients. So I take 1,200 IU a day of the vitamins E, but the secret sauce is the selenomethionine, not selenite, not selenate, must be selenomethionine. That is nature's version of an anti-burn molecule. And so when you have enough of the vitamin Z and the selenomethionine, then when the electron gets liberated, it gets picked up by the vitamin C that's inside the cell, and it's used to make energy in the battery called the mitochondria, as opposed to make a skin burn or a sunburn.
Wow.
So
Wow.
I've been doing this. I've been doing this for decades. I've encouraged other people to do it. People consistently tell me how pleasantly surprised they are at how to use nature and nurture to protect and enhance the quality of our life.
Where do you get selenomethionine?
Well, you get selenomethionine in Perk Lifeguard Tabsules. You can buy selenomethionine as a single isolated agent, generally 500 micrograms. I take 1 milligram a day. I take 1,000 micrograms a day of selenomethionine. I get mine through my Perk supplements, but you can get it as an isolated component. And I was giving a talk once, and a distinguished colleague got up and said, but I have been taught that over 500 micrograms a day, selenium, the category selenium, is toxic. And I said, sir, that's true for selenite and selenate. That is not true for selenomethionine. The next morning, he got up and said, last night I went to the literature. Dr. Jaffe is correct. Selenomethionine is safe up to thousands of micrograms a day because it's nature's form, whereas selenite and selenate, in my opinion, should not be taken. They're the work-alike that's basically a ground-up rock that I don't think has much benefit, but technically is usable in foods or in supplements.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. Well, okay. So a couple of things. If you go to elisaact.com,
Yes.
there are vitamins and supplements that Dr. Jaffe has, and that you can use their life coaches, their health coaches, to help choose. If you have this blood work done, they pair you up with the proper supplements as well. And so that's the one thing I want to share about that. And then the second thing is the grounding product I was telling you about. I invited the gym to the house, and I wanted to buy the product, and I put it on my bed overnight. So the moment you're laying on your bed and this pad is on your bed, you're grounded. You're absolutely grounded. And when you're sleeping, you're grounding for 8 hours, where 1 hour or half an hour every so often with my lifestyle. And so I slept for the first time 8 hours since I was a kid.
Good.
And
Good.
so I just want to encourage people to look into it as well. Grounding is so important. It's free. You can go and walk around.
Let me add another aspect of that issue, because most people know that their home has electricity and that their home is grounded. And that may be true in regard to the outside, but it often is not true with regard to the inside.
Okay.
And in my home, we had a specialist come with a little device and stick it into every plug to see whether they were properly grounded.
Yes.
And it turns out often they are not, but you can correctly ground them and reduce the electromagnetic smog or the electromagnetic environment, the pulsing of your body, due to improperly grounded sockets or devices in your home. And I just saw online that there are certain printers that are commonly used that, even when they're in standby mode, still have a very high electromagnetic signature. I have what's called a triaxial meter, and I can actually measure this stuff on the fly, whether I'm on a train or in a station or wherever. And it turns out there are some places where if you sit, it's well grounded, and there are other places where you sit, it's really not well grounded.
And you bring that meter with you?
All the time.
That's pretty cool. This is what it looks like, and you just stick it into that little section. You know, you're right. Houses are not, sometimes they're not properly grounded. I'm just doing this right now, that, you know, when I'm in front of the computer, when I'm laying in bed. So this is something new that I'm so grateful that you're.
Yes. And now the related but parallel issue is, if you're watching screens later at night, you should either have on the screen itself a blue blocker or be wearing blue blocker glasses yourself.
Not yellow? I mean, okay, so you're saying blue blockers. So is
Blue
that
blockers,
the amber or the red glasses?
Right. You want to let amber and green come through, but at least for an hour before you retire, you want to reduce the near UV, the blue.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Very good. I'm telling
And
you.
if you're into fashion, there's some very high profile rock and roll people, and you'll see them. Sometimes they're wearing yellow glasses, sometimes they're wearing red glasses. I don't know if it's a fashion statement or a health statement, but it certainly, appeals to the audience.
Very good. Very good. You see, I told you that we start talking with Dr. Jaffe and we can go in any direction.
Oh,
And
by the way, Sting, who's one of the people who wears the glasses, he's a very serious yoga practitioner, lives part of the year in Santa Barbara, and is a genuinely nice person. You meet him and you don't realize that this is a world famous guy who's actually trying to do good in the world with the fame that he's accumulated.
Yeah. To whom much is given, much is expected. And so there's so much new truths that we learn in the classroom, and I want to encourage all of you to share and like and follow and help grow this information, because it's not readily available. This grounding is transformational for me. I knew it was important, I just didn't know why. And now I'm learning. Clint Ober is going to be in the classroom. He's going to be a teacher in the classroom, who was the one that started this, grounding within, this connection of grounding and reducing inflammation in the body. So stay tuned. We're going to learn and grow about this too. We're going to have Dr. Jaffe come back, and we're going to, the 10th person who sends me a message will get a copy, or will be able to have a test, and they will get their own test results the 10th. So you can instant message me at Lillian's radio show. And, many people say, I'm not, it's probably already, the 10th person is already done, so I'm not even going to try. Even if you're listening to this or watching this later on, give it a try. Go to at Lillian's radio show. So you go to facebook.com/Lillian's radio show. And all you can do is if you submit that you want this test, and let's say only 9 people responded and you're the 10th person, it'll be you who'll get it. So get involved with your own life. Take your health back and declare what you want. And as simple as saying, okay, well, perhaps maybe I'll never win. Well, we manifest what we believe. And if you do believe that, you won't even try. And if you don't try, you will be right. You won't win. So I want to encourage you to go beyond what you think is going to happen and do whatever it takes to discover the roadmap to your health, whether you get it for free today or when the 10th person comes in at Lillian's radio show, or you can text me at 407-373-5959. Whatever way you do it, I don't care how you get here when you can. And I am just very grateful to Dr. Jaffe. I'm so grateful that I stumbled upon Elisa Act as I was doing my research to my roadmap to health, and that you not only responded, but you have been so kind and so generous. So thank you so much for everything that you're doing, because you have been given much, and you have been doing a lot with what you've learned. So I can't imagine all this wisdom in a single person, but don't we all qualify for that?
Oh yeah. No. I've been very fortunate, and I pay it forward as best I can.
Well done, thy good and faithful servant. And I am so grateful for the future conversations we're going to have. So spread the word. Dr. Jaffe, Dr. Russell Jaffe is in the classroom, and we're learning and growing with him, and we're going to continue to learn and grow together. So let's do whatever it takes to live our best life naturally. So thank you, Dr. Jaffe. We can say goodbye to our friends on Facebook. We've gone so long today. I might turn this into 2 videos, but who knows? Maybe we'll just do this. We'll continue to grow, and if people want to learn from till the end, then great. So I look forward to our next conversation. Thank you, Dr. Jaffe. Say goodbye to everybody on Facebook.
Ciao.
And everybody on YouTube. We'll see you.